What's up, YouTube? Alright, so this video is just going to be an install of the Batrium BMS system. I'm not going to go too much into detail. I'm basically just going to show you how it all hooks up and then hook it up to the computer just to get it running. I have already mounted all the Longmons and I've already re-sleeved all the wirings just to make them look a little bit nicer. If you want to see how I installed the Longmons or re-sleeve the wiring, check out the links below. And I'm also going to show you how not to hook up the Watchmon like I did the wrong way, because this part's pretty expensive. You don't want to do what I did where I let the magic smoke out. Boom! I just had to throw that in there one last time. Alright, so let's get to it. Alright, I put all 14 packs right here on the workbench so you guys can see exactly how it all gets hooked up and then hooked up to the computer just to get it running. And this is going to apply to either a 3S, 4S, 7S, 14S. Alright, so each pack has its own Longmon attached to it all the way down. You could technically add more Longmons if you want to, but it's not really needed. The only reason you would want more Longmons is if one battery keeps getting way out of balance. But if it keeps getting way out of balance, you have an actual problem with the pack. If you made all of your battery packs equal in capacity, one Longmon is going to be plenty to handle the entire pack. Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do is figure out exactly where you want to put all of your Longmons. There's actually two temperature sensors on each Longmon. There's one right down here towards the wire connections, and then there's one up here towards the top. The directions do tell you to try to get the temperature sensor down here really close to the cells just so you get an accurate temperature, and then of course the one up here is to measure the temperature of the actual board. So this section up here you technically don't want on your cells because the Longmon can get pretty hot. So you can actually just put it right on the side. You could either use double stick tape or you could use a couple of zip ties like I did. I just put one zip tie here and one zip tie here, and this would be good enough. So after you have all of your Longmons installed in your kit that you got, your Longmon wires would look exactly like this. Of course, I already custom made all of mine to fit my server rack that these are all going to sit in, but you don't have to do any of this if you don't want to. The normal wires look just like this. You have a 4-pin plug and a 2-pin plug, and the red and black, which is the power wires. The directions tell you to install the positive wire first and then the negative wire. Do not hook up any of the plugs yet. So the first thing you're going to do is figure out how you're going to install the positive and negative onto each pack. I went ahead and clipped the terminals off and soldered them directly to the bus bars for each pack. So after you have installed all of your positive and negative Longmon wire hookups, just like I have here, so there is two different ways you can hook this up, okay? And what's going to determine that is if you want this pack over here to be number one, or if you want the one all the way at the other end to be number one. The directions do tell you to start with the most negative battery pack first. If you want this pack to be number one, you're going to drag the 2-pin connector over this way, and then so forth. If you want the other side to be number one and this to be your very last pack, you're going to bring the 2-pin connector over this way, and the same thing over this way. If that doesn't make sense, put a comment down below and I'll try to re-explain it. Since I have all of these stretched out here, I do have one really long extension Longmon wire that I did make, so this is going to be my 2-pin connector, so I'm going to plug it into the first Longmon. Once I have the 2-pin connector hooked up, I'm going to just string it around the outside edge over to the other side, and then the very next step we're going to do is hook up the 4-pin connector. So we'll do the 2-pin connector, then the 4-pin connector, and once I run the long one all the way around to the other side, what happens here, we're going to use this one as the example. So technically what we're going to do is I'm going to hook up the 4-pin right here, and then the 2-pin that comes off of it, we're going to bring it directly over to the next Longmon. This is how you make your daisy chain. And then this one, we're going to hook up the 4-pin, and then the 2-pin's going to go over to this Longmon, and that's how we're going to do the same thing all the way down. And that is how you're going to hook up all of these in your daisy chain one after another. Alright, so since this is going to be pack number one, I'm going to start with this pack right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is hook up the 2-pin connector, and these will only go in one way. Now I can hook up this 4-pin connector, and you're going to see the green light come on. The red one's going to start blinking also. Now we're going to bring the 2-pin connector over to this Longmon, and then the 4-pin, and we're going to bring the 2-pin over to this one. Alright, so this very next step is very important. This is how I let the magic smoke out of my first Watchmon. Alright, so what you see on the right side of the screen is the 4-pin plug. That can either come from the positive or negative battery. Just depends on if you went to the left or to the right with the 2-pin plug. But what is very important is that it is a 4-pin plug. So what you're going to do is cut off this 4-pin plug and prepare the wires by either soldering the ends or putting some sort of terminal on there. And then you're going to take the blue wire over to number 10 and the yellow wire over to number 11. I'm going to repeat this one more time. The 4-pin plug, you're going to cut this off and take the yellow and blue wires over to number 10 and 11. 10 is the blue and number 11 is the yellow. The first time I hooked this up, I took the yellow and blue wires over to number 8 and 9 because I didn't think there was a difference. The Watchmon does not work like that, so the 4-pin plug has to go to number 10 and 11. Alright, so once those are in 10 and 11, the very next step, you're going to take the 2-pin connector off the other end of the daisy chain over to number 8 and 9. Alright, so this is the opposite end of the daisy chain. The blue wire is going to go to number 8 and the yellow wire is going to go to number 9. If you do not hook those up in the correct order, you will let the magic smoke out like I did, and it'll come out of a few resistors right up here. Alright, so there's one other way you can hook this up, and this is the way that I am going to be doing it. So if you didn't want to cut off any of the plugs and you change your mind like I do all the time, you're going to want to get one of these whenever you order your Batrium BMS, because what this does is it turns your Longmon plug wires into regular wires. So what I did is just made my own smaller connection, which would go from here to here, because once this is actually installed into my power wall, this little converter board is going to be hidden behind the Watchmon. So what I'm going to do now is just pick a color on here. I've got green and brown, and all you have to do is make sure on the little board here it has 8, 9, 10, and 11. You just match those up right here on the Watchmon, 8, 9, 10, and 11. I'm just using regular Ethernet wire. I just grabbed 2 colors and cut them up and soldered each of the ends here. And I'm going to pick, let's say, dark brown for number 8, and then number 9 will be the brown with the white stripe. 10 is going to be the solid green, and number 11 will be the green with the white stripe. And I would just give them a little tug to make sure they are installed and not going to come out. And then of course I'm going to hook up my solid brown to number 8, and then the brown with the white line to number 9, solid green to 10, and green with the white stripe to number 11. Alright, so there we go. Alright, so the next step will be to hook up your Longmon wires to the little converter board here, unless you already hooked them up to the Watchmon itself. And again, these can only go in one way. Alright, so now that we have all the Longmons in the daisy chain connected up to the point right here, and then it goes through the wire here and into the Watchmon, the next step is to go to Batrium.com to get the Watchmon toolkit software. So that's where we're heading next. And once you are here, you can go right over to the support page. And this is also the frequently asked questions or how-to guides, and this is how you're going to get the Watchmon toolkit software. And you're going to scroll right down here to Watchmon, and then how to install the Watchmon toolkit software. And right here is the latest download link, and at this current time the version is 1.0.30. so go ahead and click that and download it, save file. And once that's downloaded, go ahead and grab it and install it. Alright, so after you have it installed, go ahead and double click on the Watchmon toolkit icon, and this will pop up. Alright, so I just set this on top of all the batteries just so it would be a little bit closer. The next thing we can do now is go ahead and plug it in with the USB, and that will power the Watchmon. And it is recommended that the first time you do hook it up is to use the USB for the power. Once you have it all set up, then you can hook it up with the power wires right over here in the corner. So for this first hookup, we're just going to hook up the USB only. And we should see a couple of lights turn on. We have a red status light right here that blinks. And right over here we have the green RX and the red TX LEDs lit up. Alright, so now that that's powered on, we go over to the computer. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just maximize the screen. And as you can tell, we only have one bar here, and that's pretty normal after you install the software and you hook it up for the very first time. Alright, so the first thing we're going to want to do here is go up to Menu, go down to Tools, and go ahead and go to Wizard Setup. And you do get a warning, so go ahead and understand and accept it. Alrighty, so in here you're going to choose your battery type, so whatever battery you are using, this is where you're going to select it. And since I'm using the regular 18650s, I'm going to select the long life. And next we're going to change the cell mod, which for my case is the long mod. So if you're using a different style here, go ahead and choose that here. The total devices is next. So this is how many cell mods you're using, or long mods for my case. And I have 14, so you're going to go ahead and put your number in here. Alright, so the next thing that you would typically select or change would be the shunt, but we have not installed the shunt yet. They actually recommend that you install it without the shunt first, just to make sure everything is working. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to none. And after we install the shunt, this is where you can change your battery capacity. So my batteries are roughly 226 amp hours a piece. So I'll change this to 226 later. Alright, go ahead and hit the save button. Alright, so occasionally you will have to enter in a PIN code. So if you do get this little pop-up box, you'll find your PIN code on the bottom of the Watchmon. So go ahead and enter in your PIN code if it asks. Alright, so we do have a success here. So the next thing we're going to do is go up to Menu and go down to Hardware. And then you're going to go to the second one up here on top, which is your cell mod. Alright, so this is where you would change different settings for your long mods and your battery voltages and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to do any of that stuff today, but what we do have to do in here first is do a device sync. And what this is going to do is sync all your long mods and save it to the Watchmon. Alright, so I'll go ahead and hit device sync. And then all we're going to do is hit the start button here. And if you look at the long mods now, it is doing its sync process, so I'll let the lights do their little thing and then I'll come right back. Alright, so it was a success here, and you can see the first long mod is number 1 and it shows 14 for the last. And of course over here on the TX and RX it does show 14 as well. Alright, so we can go ahead and close that. And if you want to go back to that main screen, which we all want to see, go to Menu and then go to Chart. Boom! Alright, so this is the main screen here that everybody likes to see here, of course. And up here we're showing my lowest pack, which is 3.96 volts, and the highest pack, which is 4 volts, so that's a pretty good number, I think. And then of course you have your temperatures right here. We're not doing any sort of bypassing or anything like that, and all your shunt information is going to be right over here. And you also have the shunt watt hours as well. That's a new feature. Alright, so now we can do a quick bypass test, and this will make sure that everything is working correctly. And if you go down right here, it will tell you bypass testing has not been verified. So we're going to go ahead and do that by clicking right here. Alright, you're going to get a little pop-up right here, and this is the bypass tester. We're going to go ahead and hit the start button. And now you can see all the LEDs on the long mods doing their bypass test. I'll let all these play through real quick and then I'll come back to the screen. Alright, everything was a success. You can see right over here it all says pass and OK. So that's great. Everything is working perfectly. Alright, so we can go ahead and close that out. And then we can go back up to the main screen. So go to Menu and then Chart. And now all of the little checkboxes are gone over here. I'm going to go ahead and shut this off. Alright, now that we shut off the software, we can go ahead and disconnect the USB device, and we're going to go ahead and hook up the shunt. Alright, so for this I did unhook the Longmon wires just so I could bring this over here on the side of my desk so we can see everything right here in front of us. Alright, so Batrium does offer a pre-made shunt cable, or you can make your own. Whenever you do order the Batrium, it does come with the connector and the pins inside the connector. And if you want to make your own shunt cable, I'll be uploading a video on this at a later date. But basically these two wires are roughly the same. With mine, I did use Ethernet cable inside because I just have plenty of it laying around. Alright, so what you're going to do to hook this up, the shunt is going to be hooked up to pins 12, 13, 14, and 15. And all of these numbers match up to the wires right at the end of the cable. On the back of the plug here, it does tell you which number each wire is. So for example, the black wire here is pin 1 on here, and that is the ground, and that will go to number 15 on the Watchmon. Alright, so the next pin over to the right, which is green, and that is pin 2, and that is going to go to pin 13 down here on the Watchmon. Pin 3 is the red one, and that's your power wire, and that's going to go to number 12 on the Watchmon. And the last one, number 4, which is yellow, and pin 4 is going to go to 14 on the Watchmon. Alright, so basically you're just going to hook up these ends right down here on the Watchmon according to the pin location. And on the Batrium website, it does tell you exactly which pin is what and which pin goes where on the Watchmon. I'm not going to be using the pre-made cable for this. I'm going to be using the one that I had already made, and my colors are a little bit different since I'm just using regular Ethernet wire. I have a blue wire with a white stripe, and that's going to be number 12 on the Watchmon. My next one in line is a solid brown, and that's going to go to pin 13. The next one in line is brown with a white line, and that's going to go to pin 14. And the very last one is a solid blue, and that's going to go to 15 on the Watchmon. So I'm going to go ahead and screw these down real quick. And once you have them all in there, do give them just a little tug to make sure they are securely in place. I'm going to go ahead and just pull this off to the side here. Next thing we're going to install is the actual shunt, and what a shunt does is basically just measure amps. But of course this one is a little more high-tech and has a few extra features. Alright, so to install this, you actually want it to be on the negative battery post. You want it to be as close to the battery as you can possibly get. And they do recommend you to put this terminal right here off the battery, basically so the plug will be facing away from the battery. But if for some reason you cannot hook up this side to the battery terminal, you can hook up this side to the battery terminal, and inside the Watchmon Toolkit software you can reverse the direction in the software so it'll read correctly. So it doesn't technically matter which way you hook it up, but they of course want you to hook it up with this side on the negative battery. And the little wire coming off, you're going to put your own terminal on there to match your batteries, and this is going to go to the positive battery post. Alright, so we'll go ahead and install that real quick. Alright, so mine's going to be super easy to hook up for this video because I do use all the Anderson connectors, so that's what I'm going to hook up right here. I have a pre-made Anderson connection right here, so I'm just going to hook up this terminal right to the shunt. Alright, so now that this is made, I'm going to go ahead and hook up all my battery packs in series real quick, and then we will hook this up on the most negative battery terminal. Alright, so I went ahead and wired all the battery packs in a series configuration to get my nominal voltage of 48 volts. I did have to use some extension wires because normally this is inside of a server rack and the configuration is set up a little bit different. So I did have to run a couple extension wires to get the series connection, but for this demonstration it should be just fine. And since this is pack number 1, this is the most negative battery, I did run a longer extension to the back here so we can hook up the shunt directly to that. So I'm going to go ahead and connect these two. And then I'm going to hook up the little power wire over to the positive battery, and I'm just probably going to run a small jumper wire over to it just for this demonstration. But normally you would go ahead and permanently install this on the positive battery terminal. Now it is recommended to hook up everything without the power going to the Watchmon, basically so you don't damage anything. Alright, so now that the power wire is hooked up, we can go ahead and connect up the shunt. Now that that's hooked up, I'm going to go ahead and move this back over to the spot on top of the batteries, and I'll re-hook up the Longmon wires, and then we'll go ahead and open up the Watchmon toolkit software and install the shunt. And now we can hook up the USB cable. Alright, now we can open up the Watchmon toolkit software again. So now we're going to install the shunt real quick. So we go up to Menu, go down to Hardware, and of course you got the warning again. Go ahead and accept. And now we go right over to the shunt, third one over from the top. And right here you have to hit the edit button or nothing is going to happen. So go ahead and hit the edit button. And the drop down menu, go ahead and select the shunt that you have. And mine is the SFP 102 mod 100 ohm 375 amp shunt. And right here I'm going to go ahead and change the capacity to 226. And if you weren't able to install the shunt in the correct direction, you can always hit the reverse orientation right here. Alright, that should be it. Go ahead and hit the save button and go ahead and enter in your PIN number, and it was a success. Alright, so now we can go back to the menu and go to chart, and here it is right here. Battery voltage right at the shunt is 55.78. Alright, so that is basically it. We are all set up and running. Alright, so the next thing we can do now is go ahead and shut off the software, unplug the USB cable, and then we can hook up the Watchmon to the battery bank. Alright, now that the power is disconnected, we can go ahead and hook up pin 1 and pin 2 to your bank of batteries. And pin 1 is the ground and pin 2 is the power. I had already pre-made a longer wire for me to use, so I'm going to go ahead and use this for this temporary install. I went ahead and put terminals on each end, and I have just the soldered ends down here. It is also recommended to put a fuse on here, but since we're just doing the demonstration, I do not have one installed. And of course, leave this unhooked while you're hooking it up to the Watchmon. So we'll go ahead and hook up pin 1 for the ground and pin 2 for the power. Alright, so now that this is hooked up to the Watchmon, we can connect the other ends to your battery positive and negative. And again, this can be hooked up from 8 to 65 volts, so as long as your battery bank is within that voltage, you can use this connection right here. Now, in order for this to kind of work correctly, you're going to want to hook up all of your inverters or loads onto this side. And now the Watchmon is going to be a load, so you're going to hook up the Watchmon on this side of the shunt. And the reason for that is, since it is a load, you'll get to see exactly how much the Watchmon is draining from the batteries. And then for the positive, I'm actually just going to hook it up to this little wire right here, but technically you would hook this up directly to your battery. And of course, make sure you do not short it out. And once we installed that ground, the Watchmon has turned on. Alright, so now that that's hooked up, we're going to go ahead and plug in the USB cable one more time so we can open up the Watchmon toolkit software again. And then we'll check to see how much the Watchmon is actually drawing from the batteries. Alright, so go ahead and open up the Watchmon toolkit. And there you go. If you go over here to the right hand corner, you'll see exactly what the Watchmon is drawing from your battery bank. The shunt power in watts. Alright, there you go. You are basically set up and running and ready to go. The Batrium system is going to do its thing as you drain the batteries and as you recharge the batteries. And this is the basic setup of how it all works. Alright, so that last step wasn't technically necessary. All we were doing is seeing what the Watchmon was pulling off the batteries. Technically, you don't need to hook up with the USB after you power it from your battery pack. And now the next thing you would want to do is link up to it with Wi-Fi, and then you can monitor remotely. And I know this was just a demonstration video on how to hook everything up. Obviously, if you were hooking it up in your own system, you would connect everything more permanently. And again, this does apply for the 12-volt systems like a 3S or 4S, 24-volt systems which is a 6 or 7S, and the 48-volt systems which is anywhere from 13, 14, or 15S systems. They're all pretty much the same. It just depends on how many Longmons are in your daisy chain. And if you need to unhook any of the Longmons for any reason, they recommend unhooking the 4-pin connector and then the 2-pin connector, and then do any sort of maintenance you need to do, and then when you hook it back up, hook up the 2-pin connector, then the 4-pin connector. Alright, so the Batrium is pretty easy to hook up as long as you follow the directions. The reason I blew up my first Watchmon was because I thought I understood how the yellow and blue wires worked. Basically what I was trying to do the first time around when I blew up the Batrium was I wanted my first pack in my server rack to show up as number 1 in the software. And the way I wired it did not allow me to do that. So I thought I could fool the system by swapping the RX and TX wires, which is number 8, 9, 10, and 11. You cannot do that. The system is not designed to do that. The only thing that matters is if you're going to be cutting the 4-pin plug off, the yellow and blue wires have to go to 10 and 11. And at the other end of the daisy chain, the 2-pin plug has to go to number 8 and 9. Those are the very important things. And it doesn't matter which way you wire the Longmons, you know, if you bring the 2-wire plug over to the left or if you bring it over to the right. What matters is the 4-pin plug goes to 10 and 11 and the 2-pin plug goes to 8 and 9. If for some reason pack 1 in your system is showing up as your last pack in the software, all you have to do is take the 2-pin connector and wire it the opposite way. Instead of bringing it to the left, you bring it to the right. And what that'll do is rearrange your packs in the software how you want it. That's basically what I was trying to do when I blew up mine. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you check out the link below. It'll take you directly to the Batrium website if you want to get more information or if you just want to check out all the products they have. They have like 10 kits that you can choose from with or without the shunts, and they do have other types of cell mons as well. Block mons, cell mons, long mons, leaf mons, there's all kinds of mons, So go over to batrium.com, order your BMS system, and follow this video to hook it up. And if you guys do have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Alright, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Be dirty video. Basically I already have the Watchmons installed, and I have all of the Watchmon, and I don't even know what this stuff's called. Boom! And usually the red one turns on, but I already had it hooked up once. And alright, so there is 2 different ways that you can, of course, and the hooked up, and then we will and then we'll check and if you're gonna add your own the yellow and when if you I'm all over the place now.